welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my October wrap-up. I read 7 books in October, and that's actually the same number of books that I read in September. And if you watched my wrap-up for September, you might remember that I wasn't that happy with the number of books I read that month. I'm more happy this month just because I read some really big books. Here is my stack of physical books that I read this month, and in addition to these books I also read a couple of audiobooks. And also I did not rate any book lower than 3 stars this month, which is also really good. So yeah, let's just get into the books that I read in October. So the first book that I read in October was Two Boys Kissing by David Levithan. I might have started this at the very end of September actually, but I finished it in October. And this is a book that is very different and quite difficult to explain. What makes this book different is the fact that it's told from the point of view of someone who is dead. I'm not going to say who that is because that's a spoiler. But basically, because the narration is sort of told from someone who is no longer here, it's like they're watching it from like above, almost. So they're watching this story taking place here and another story taking place there, and we're easily jumping from like one storyline to another and from one perspective to another. And it's done quite seamlessly, and it totally worked in this book. So sort of the main story, I guess, in this book is basically 2 boys. Their name is Harry and Craig, I think it was. And they used to be a couple, but they're no longer together. And now they're trying to set the record for the world's longest kiss, which basically means that they have to kiss for like more than 30 hours. And this event is being streamed online, and it eventually goes viral, and like the entire world is sort of watching this kiss taking place. So that's like, I guess, the main storyline, but there are also other storylines in this book with other characters. They're sort of linked together in a way. So this entire book basically takes place during this kiss. And it's very beautifully written. The language was almost like poetic, I guess. This is super short, so I mean, we didn't really spend enough time with each character and with each storyline for me to really get invested. But there was a lot that I really liked about this book. I thought the narration was excellent. That definitely added something to the story. And I also like that the world record, the kiss, was actually inspired by a real-life event that took place a few years back. There's also heavier topics in here, like suicide attempt, so be aware of that. But yeah, like I said, I didn't really have time to really get invested in this, but there was also a lot of things that I liked, so I'm giving this book 3.5 stars. So the next book that I read in October was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is another book that I started in September, but I read most of it in October. So in this book we're meeting Spencer, who's dreamed her whole life of becoming a pilot. And in this universe, sort of the remaining humans live underground on a planet that I can't actually remember the name of. But they live underground there. They also have like a base on the ground where they're basically like fighting aliens coming to attack them. And most of the fights with the aliens take place like in the air. So basically the pilots are being seen like the bravest heroes. And Spencer's father was also a pilot, but he was deemed a coward for deserting his team right before he died. And because of that, Spencer's chances of becoming a pilot are pretty slim. So this book, it took me a little while to get into it, but once I did get into it, I really enjoyed it. There's like a school setting in here, which I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed like the relationship between the characters and sort of the group of people that we're following. I didn't care much for like the stuff about flying and like the stuff about battle and things like that. But yeah, this story took some turns that I wasn't expecting, and I really enjoyed that. So throughout this book, it sort of felt like more and more layers were uncovered, but that also left me with more and more questions. So even though I was a little bit, like, not bored, but it took me a little while to get into it in the beginning, I definitely enjoyed it by the end, and I am very much looking forward to reading the second book in this series. And I ended up giving this book 4 stars. The next book I read was an audiobook, and that was There Goes Sunday School by Alexander C. Eberhardt. So this book is about 16-year-old Mike, who has grown up in a very religious and conservative community. His family is very active in the local church, and most of his friends are connected to the church as well. So Mike knows that he is gay, but he doesn't really intend on letting anyone know that, because he doesn't think that his family or his community will accept it, and especially the local pastor, the pastor in the local church, because he is expressing some very homophobic views. Things start to spiral out of control for Mike when his sketchbook, where he has some drawings that doesn't leave much doubt about his identity, and that sketchbook is being stolen. And also he starts to grow closer to the pastor's son, Chris. So I picked up this book because I heard it compared to Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, and I absolutely love that book. And I can definitely see why this book is compared to that one, because there is definitely some similarities. I think it even takes place in the same area, actually. But I think the story are quite different, so it's not like the same story, but I can see the comparison. I would say that this book has a more serious backdrop, though. There's quite a bit of homophobia in this book, and also quite a lot of, I guess, self-loathing, because Mike has no intention of like ever coming out. He doesn't like himself at all for a large part of this book. So Mike is a character, I sympathized with him, but I didn't always like him. There was especially one thing that he did that was absolutely wrong. That was absolutely the wrong thing to do. And I kind of wish that had been called out or challenged a bit more than it was. But Mike definitely came a long way in this story. And he was a very different person by the end compared to how he was in the beginning. So I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was so good. I definitely have a thing for, like, I guess, forbidden romances, forbidden relationships, and there was a bit of that in this book. So this book sort of gave me 5-star feelings pretty much all the way through. The one thing I didn't totally love was the ending. I wish the ending had gone in a little bit of a different direction, I guess. I didn't hate it, but I wanted something different. So I haven't quite been able to decide if I'm giving this book 5 stars or 4.5 stars, but it's very high in my ratings. I absolutely love this book, and like I said, it's being compared to Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, and I can see why. So if you like that book, you'll probably enjoy this book as well. So yeah, I will definitely recommend this book. The next book that I read was Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. This book is the second book in the Dark Artificer series, which is the third series in the Shadowhunter universe. So because this is the second book in a series, I'm not going to say anything about what it's about. But I mean, this book is long. It's quite easy to read, so it didn't take me that long to read, but it felt quite long. I kind of wish it was a little bit shorter, I guess. But there are things that I liked in here. I really liked the family relationships in this series. That is probably maybe my favorite thing. I also liked that Alec and Magnus were here, because they're my favorite characters, so I loved seeing them. What I didn't like about this, I mean, there's basically a love triangle in here that takes quite a bit of focus, and I hate love triangles. I mean, I hate love triangles, and I don't really want them. So didn't enjoy that. And also, like I said, this story, I mean, it felt a little bit long, but the ending, however, because by the time I got to the ending, I was kind of ready for this book to just be over, because I was ready to move on to something else. But the ending made me want to go and pick up the next book right away, because I wanted to know what's gonna happen next. And I'm still excited to read the next book because of the things that happen at the end, because things picked up and stuff happened. So yeah, in the end I decided to give this book 3.5 stars, which I think is the same rating that I gave the first book. Overall, so far at least, I think this has been probably my least favorite in series in the Shadowhunter universe. I still enjoy it. And also, I didn't say it, but there's the main romance in here, because this is quite a romance-focused series, I guess. And the main romance in here I also don't really care that much about. Like, I don't mind it, but I'm also not super interested. So, but this is a Shadowhunter book, and I love the Shadowhunter universe. So yeah, 3.5 stars feels like the right rating for this one. The next book I read was another audiobook, and that book was 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. So this book is about a bookseller. His name is Malcolm Kershaw, and several years back he made a list of like 8 perfect murders, and he posted them to a blog. And now, like several years later, it seems like someone is using that list to commit a series of murders, like based on the murders in those 8 books. So this was, I thought, was a super interesting and intriguing mystery. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was something different from what I've read before. So it's based on like 8 murders from like real books. So there are definitely spoilers for those 8 books. And those are, I guess, like classic murder mysteries. So if you plan to read any of those and don't want to be spoiled, you should not read this book, because there are spoilers. I'd only read one of the books that were featured in here, and I don't really plan to read any of the others anytime soon, so I figured it would be okay to read this. So I'm unsure. Like I said, I quite enjoyed this. I'm not sure how I feel about the ending. I guess I didn't love it. But initially, like when I finished this, I thought that this book was like a 3.5 stars. But now, when some time has passed, I feel like it might be more of a 3 star. Like, I'm not sure why exactly, because when I read this, I quite enjoyed it, but it also didn't leave much of an impression on me. I've sort of like not thought about it since I read it, and looking back, it feels more like a 3-star book, so I guess that's the rating I'm going to go with. But yeah, this was a fun, interesting mystery, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So the next book that I read was Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, which is not a story that I'm all that familiar with, so I don't know like how close this story is to the original, I guess. But basically in this book, I guess the main characters of this story are 3 girls, Miriam, Wanda and Irina, I think it was. And they come from very different parts of society, but their stories sort of links together. So this book is very like fairy tale-ish. It feels like a fairy tale in a way, and it's very like rich. The writing was very beautiful, and it was really atmospheric, which I really enjoyed about this. And for the first, like, I guess maybe 150 pages, I was really intrigued by this, and I was super into it. But after that, I just got a little bit bored, I guess. I didn't really feel that invested, honestly, in the story. And also I thought the ending felt a little bit rushed maybe, or like it wrapped up a little quickly in a sense. So I don't know. There were parts of this that I really liked, like I said, like the writing, the atmosphere, and I liked the characters too. There was like a found family aspect in here that I really enjoyed. But for a large part of this book, I was also a little bored. So I guess maybe this book wasn't quite for me. I still give it 3 stars though. It's not a bad book at all. It just didn't quite capture me the way that I would have liked. And then finally, the last book that I read in October, and I finished this book on the very last day of the month actually, and that was Felix Ever After by Casey Calendar. So this book is about Felix, who is trans and queer and black, and he very much wants to fall in love. He is also an artist, and he is trying to get into college sort of through his art. So someone at his school puts up a gallery with pictures of Felix from some years back, from before he transitioned, and also posts his old name. And Felix is obviously very hurt by this, and he gets sort of obsessed with figuring out who did this and to get revenge on that person. So this book is very much about Felix's journey over the course of the summer, and his journey is a really messy one. Felix makes a lot of mistakes, but you can also see where he's coming from. The things that he does can be sort of linked back to things that he has experienced in the past, and you can understand him even though you're not always agreeing with his actions. So this book just felt really realistic, both the characters and the relationship between characters in this book. There's also romance in here, and I don't want to say anything about it because of spoilers, but I absolutely loved it. It gave me all the warm fuzzy feelings, so yeah, absolutely loved it. But I think the thing that I loved the most about this book is how it dealt with like gender identity issues, because even though I've read books with trans characters and characters who are questioning their gender before, I feel like this was the first book I've read that really sort of focused on those topics. And because this is an Own Voices book, it felt really realistic. And because of that, I feel like this book is going to mean a lot to a lot of people. It certainly made an impact on me. I got a little bit emotional at the end. The ending was absolutely beautiful. And for a while, this book felt like maybe a 4.5 stars. But by the end, I could not give it anything other than 5 stars because I absolutely loved it. So this was a really, really good book. I loved it so much. And I think, I know that this was my favorite book of the month. So that was the 7 books that I read in October. Like I said, I'm really happy with the books that I read. Like, there were no ratings lower than 3 stars, which is great. And I had a 5-star read and a book that was almost 5-star, maybe even is 5-star. So I'm quite happy with this, and I am so going into November feeling super motivated, and I want to read all the books. And I think, and I hope that November is going to be an amazing reading month for me. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!